If you own a med spa, you want to listen up to this because it's going to help you either grow or it's going to help you get a bigger multiplier when it comes to merger and acquisitions, because these things came up time and time again. So I want to know, what do you think the top two metrics the top performing med spas are really paying attention to? What do you think it is? Do you think it's number of visits per year, revenue, net profit? Put it in the comments. Well, I'm not going to have you wait any longer. I'm going to give you the first one. So the first one is revenue per hour by provider. Okay. Now, I want you to note that I said revenue per hour, not revenue per visit. That's a really important key, because oftentimes people first start by really trying to improve and track revenue per visit. And then they realize that there is a big difference between one provider and the next in their productivity and their revenue per hour based on how long it takes them to do the treatment, how much time it takes them to turn the room over. So revenue per hour is a big one that you want to be tracking and focusing on. Now, what's really interesting, when we were looking at the top med spas across the country versus the average med spas across the country, that those top performing med spas actually generated 85% more revenue per hour than the average med spa. 85%. That's almost twice the ticket amount that a patient spends when they come in per hour. That is huge. So you got to start somewhere in increasing that revenue per hour. And so I want to give you some actionable items that you can take so that not only can you just start focusing on revenue per hour, but once you see where you're currently at, I want you to have some tools and some ideas of how you can go about increasing that revenue per hour. So the first thing that I encourage you to look at is to eliminate procedures that are not profitable at the end of the day. So what you need to do is you need to review your service menu, look at how much you have to pay staff to do that treatment, what your consumables are, how long it takes you to really see if that treatment or service is profitable. Just to give you a quick example, rarely do we find that dermaplaning is profitable for you. Do patients like it? Yes. Do estheticians love to do it? Yes, it's very satisfying. I love me a dermaplane. However, at the end of the day, is it really profitable for you, or is that a treatment that you can remove? Another one that I often see, especially if you're a day spa that then converts into a med spa, you continue to offer waxing treatments even though you have laser hair removal. And you look again at if it is a profitable treatment for you at the end of the day, and oftentimes it's not. It's not. So that's another treatment that you could eliminate. Okay, so you want to review your service menu items and see and eliminate any service that is not profitable. That's automatically going to help increase your revenue per hour. The next thing that you want to look at is your pricing. Again, this is where you need to look at what your consumables, what you're paying your staff and your overhead are, what the industry is charging out there, and constantly auditing that to see if you need to increase your prices. This is where we're working smarter, not harder. The next thing is to combine procedures together. Recommend and do combination treatment plans. Now, this is something that requires a little bit more advanced training. This is something that requires a lot of confidence in recommending combination treatment plans to your patients, there's a number of treatments out there that you can do the same day. Because when you think about having to turn over rooms and welcome and, check in, check out, if you were able to take 2 appointments and put them into one, how you're going to be that much more profitable because you're going to be reducing the amount of time it takes to complete those 2 services. But that is really a concentrated effort to get to the level where you're not only recommending comprehensive treatment plans, but actually doing combination treatment plans in the same treatment. A really natural one first to start is your neurotoxins and your fillers. That's an easy one. But what can we do to start combining some of our, laser treatments, body treatments, including IV therapy? Where can we work smarter, not harder? Where can we even increase our patient satisfaction and results even more by utilizing combination treatment plans? Okay, so we talked about eliminate the procedure if it's not profitable, increase your prices, combine treatments in the same appointment. And then the last one is reduce time to perform the treatment. I see this a lot on the esthetician side of services, which the profit margin oftentimes is a little less as well. And so it's really important that you look at how much time it's taking them to perform these treatments. And it's not only about performing the treatment, but it's also how long it takes to turn over that room. I don't know how many times I hear team members potentially complaining about, I need more time in between treatments. And the reality is if we're blocking off 30 minutes in between appointments to turn over rooms, to take a break, all of those things, then what happens when there's a gap in the schedule, plus you have that additional 30-minute time block built in, and you're literally paying team members to sit and do nothing, okay? So you really wanna make sure that you're tight in between appointments and turning that room over quickly, having very specific calls of what that looks like, and don't let your team pull the wool over your eyes and tell you that they need all this time in between appointments. And if they truly do need more time, I would encourage you to look at having an MA, or I like to call them a runner, that you don't have to pay that high hourly wage to turn over a room and prep things for staff members. And that's going to allow them to see more patients. So you want to look at reducing time in between treatments. So I want to give you an interesting stat here when it comes to reducing times to perform treatments. So in staff utilization. So on average, the top performers of med spas across the country, you want to know what their staff utilization rate is? It is running at about 85% for staff utilization, where the average med spa, the middle of the road med spa, they're at around 40% staff utilization. That's literally twice as much for staff utilization and running at capacity. And there's a lot of things that goes into staff utilization, but that's like a really big number and metric that you should be paying attention to, staff utilization, okay? Because you want to be, you want to be at 85% utilization. You don't want to be at that 40% or less. So make sure that you're paying attention to utilization. So that very first metric, major metric that you should be tracking is revenue per hour, not revenue per visit, guys, because revenue per visit for, let's say, a hydrofacial that's platinum, it could run you 90 minutes. And then if you are giving them too much time to turn over the room, that same dollar amount in essence could be almost 2 hours of time. That's a big difference than looking at revenue per hour. Okay, so that differentiator between revenue per visit and revenue per hour is a big one. And then you want to, 4 things to increase revenue per hour: eliminate the procedures that aren't profitable for you. Increase your prices, combine treatments the same day. There's a lot of combinations that are possible to do treatments same day. but you got to talk about it. You got to be strategic. You got to train your team. And the last one is really focusing on staff utilization and reducing the time to perform treatments. So the second big major metric that not only are merger and acquisition companies looking at, but also the med spas that are generating the most revenue is number of visits per year. Number of visits per year. And I talk a lot about rebooking rates, but when you look at number of visits per year, to me, that trickles down into a whole bunch of things. So I want to give you 5 different things that you can do to increase the number of visits per year. The first and foremost, and this is like a no-brainer, but I see it time and time again, that you have to have really a rock solid start to finish consultation process. And so many times this kind of is swept under the rug because they focus on, well, they know how to explain what, how the treatment works and, what the pre and post protocol is for this treatment. And like, do you want this package kind of thing? What I see med spas really miss the mark on oftentimes have to do with just a couple of things that really make all the difference in the world. So the first thing is that they don't focus on pain and results. So what is the patient's pain point, challenges? How long has it been bothering them? What are all the things that they have tried? This is all the information that needs to be gathered, not just to figure out, like it's not that hard to figure out what treatment they need to do, but it is important information to have to be able to include that in your recommendation, to get those micro commitments, buy-ins, and for them to believe you that you are finally the person that understands them and can help get the result that they're looking for. So you don't focus enough on pain and you don't focus enough on the result that they are trying to get. You focus on how the device or the treatment works. And the second thing that is missed in the consultation process is you don't ask for a commitment. You don't have the verbiage that is within you to ask with confidence to have a patient get started, to make a commitment to a treatment plan, to a membership. You don't have the verbiage, and so you make a recommendation and then you let them think about it, or let me know if you want, or you're going to want to do this, and you lose out. And so if this is some of the things that is challenging you in your med spa, make sure you reach out to us because we have a really solid 7 steps to a 5-star consultation training. It's framework, it's exact scripting, it's tools to really empower your team to a rock solid consultation process. So the next thing that you can do to increase the number of visits per year is to track rebooking rates by provider. Okay, not only are you going to track them, but you also need to give your team tools and scripts to be able to, with confidence, rebook patients. This is back kind of to that consultation of getting a commitment and really being a leader in the consultation room and letting them know when you're going to need to see them back. When I go to the dentist, when I go to the doctor, they tell me when they want to see me back. And I empower you as a med spa provider that you can have that same level of authority in your treatment room, in your consultations. And it just takes having the confidence and the expertise and the right scripting that you feel comfortable with presenting to your patients. Because you want to be trying to shoot for at least 75, but the top performing med spas are at that 80% rebooking rate. Another thing that you can do to increase the number of visits per year is to make 2-week follow-up calls. And I know, you're busy, you don't have time, but I promise you that there is a system that you could put in place to make this really easy and simple. And this is really where we're separating that luxury, high-end, high-touch experience. This is where you're going to be one of those top performing med spas where your patients are spending 85% more, 85%, almost twice as much more than the average med spa, because this is part of their protocol, education, building trust, building authority with your patient is that 2-week follow-up call. The next thing that you can do is to have a really solid membership. And I'm a big fan of a membership that is a vehicle for your patient to either be able to afford or make it super simple for them to commit to your transformational corrective treatment plan. And then part 2 is to continue with maintenance, because after you give them their great transformational results, we got to show them and teach them and retain them to extend their results, to maintain their results. And so a membership is really powerful for increasing number of visits per year as well. And then the last tool that you can do to increase number of visits per year is to have reactivation campaigns. So some examples of reactivation campaigns are, it's been 3 months since your last neurotoxin appointment, and you make it really easy for them, to click a link and schedule. And so you can send them, a voicemail drop and an automated text message immediately following that to make it super simple. That's one of my favorite ones. Sending them a birthday gift. I'll have to do another training about how, gift cards and getting patients in their birthday month is a great way to increase number of visits and annual spend per patient. Reactivation campaigns for birthdays is a great one. You could do it with filler. You also can do it if you have a membership program to pull a report when the last time they utilized or came in. And there's a drip campaign that you can reactivate patients to come in and utilize their membership more, or, do that high touch and call them, because the biggest reasons why there's cancellations with membership is because they don't use it. Part 2, they don't know how to use it. And that's again, comes back to, again, consultations, okay? So those are some different ideas of reactivation. One final one would be off of a front end offer with your marketing. If they don't book to a package or a membership, or certainly to their next appointment, then I would love to see you have a reactivation campaign to get them to come back in. Because let's face it, when it comes to your marketing, by the time you pay your consumable, your labor, your marketing costs, your overhead with, scheduling or front desk, that first appointment, not always is there much profit left at the end of the day. So if we're not retaining those new patients off of our marketing efforts, then we're not going to hit our growth and revenue goals. Okay, so have a reactivation campaign for new patients that came in off of your marketing, but you didn't retain them. They didn't rebook. They didn't go to the package. They didn't go to the membership. And we want to remarket to them, learn more about them, have them learn more about you to fit their needs. Because sometimes that relationship takes frequency and consistency with messaging to build that trust for them to come back in, especially if your consultation process is not rock solid. Okay, so just to recap again, 5 things to increase number of visits per year. That second major metric that the top performing med spas across the country are paying attention to. You can, again, you got to start with a solid, rock solid consultation process where you're focusing on pain points and results, and you're not afraid to ask for a commitment, okay? The next thing is you want to track rebooking rates by providers, and you want to have that roles and responsibilities of who ultimately is responsible for getting that rebooking. And I really believe that it should be the provider that had spent all that time doing the treatment, doing the consultation to get the commitment. Even if your front desk is the one that actually schedules it, they should make the handoff with the commitment to your front desk. That is a best practice for sure. Do 2-week follow-up calls, have a really strong membership, and do reactivation campaigns. Those are my tips and tricks to really focusing on the 2 major metrics that top performers across the country are really dialed in on revenue per hour, not visit, but revenue per hour, and then number of visits per year. So I'm going to open up the floor for questions. Hi, Katrina.
So my question is, transitioning from the day spa to the med spa, we do have quite a few of those services that are those lower price points. Brow lamination takes a while, lash lift and tint, they take a while. They take up a lot of that time, but it's also bringing in clientele still. So I guess, how do you transition from getting rid of those appointments, which are bringing in some of that, I guess, lower hanging fruit, to experience your spa?
Yeah, great question. So before just ripping off the Band-Aid, if you started as a day spa and now you are moving into the med spa space, I understand the hesitation and reality that you can't just cut them off at the knees because they are revenue generators for you. This is
right.
First where you need to teach your departments, your teams, how to work together and cross promote each other's services. And this is really tricky. Let's say I can only do waxing. I can't do laser hair removal. I'm not likely to want to really recommend over to laser hair removal unless I'm incentivized, because I'm going to lose my tip on my wax service. Even if they don't do the treatment themselves, they're just enough dangerous to start a conversation or make a recommendation to schedule a consultation or a treatment onto another service type that they don't handle. And the second thing is you absolutely have to compensate, because otherwise it's going to be in one ear and out the other, and you have to hold them accountable. And eventually you're going to have to, pick a side, in the sense of, if you're dabbling, then no, the path of least resistance is going to stay there. But time and time again, like we just had a med spa last year that made the transition from day spa to med spa. And they just got to the point where they just had to remove that treatment, and it forced, they gave them the heads up that, next month we're doing away with these treatments. And so rebook your patients on these new treatments. And they got these specials, incentives to kind of convert them over. And what they found is, while they lost a few patients, they're so much more profitable on the med spa side that it was worth it at the end of the day.
But I know hydrofacial is a big thing. I don't believe in it. And neither do my estheticians. It's a glorified microdermabrasion, and they can do so much better doing something else. But it's a hot item. So where do you go in between bringing in a hot item that you don't believe in, which is one of the high, booked facials on the market right now, versus, I guess, staying true to who you are and what you believe in? Do you bring in those services, or do you just focus on what the other things are that you do, that you offer people that actually work?
I don't think that just bringing in the hot, sexy thing without an ascension model is in your best interest, right? While front-end hydrofacial works really well, there isn't a lot of med spas out there that have a great ascension model that actually makes them good revenue off of hydrofacial. When I say good revenue, I mean those patients rebook, those patients go into a membership, those patients go on to do higher ticket services. Because I've also had a lot of clients tell me that is just like, well, everyone wants it, everyone's asking for it, I got it, but we're turning and burning through them. They're one and done because they didn't have an ascension model. I have other clients that do a light service, like they might do, a skin tightening facial that's their own special protocol that they're really believer in, that they are able to convert that patient into their membership or their reoccurring model because they have a good story to tell with it, with patients. But I do agree with you that the consumable is high for hydrofacial. It is sexy, it gets patients through the door, but if you don't have a solid ascension model of next steps after that first hydrofacial, it's not doing you any good. By the time you marketing costs, your consumable, your labor, if you don't retain them, that's not doing anything for you.
Do you have a benchmark for the dollar amount per hour for a typical esthetician, where there's facials, chemical peels, microneedling, hydrofacial, laser hair removal, Virtue? That's kind of what we have in our spa, but I was curious in what the industry standard would be for that dollar per hour.
I have gotten these numbers from 2 different EMRs. So those EMRs are able to pull POS information from all of their med spas that are in there, but how it's categorized, to me, it may be a little bit inconsistent. So take this with a grain of salt, okay? So the average revenue per hour for an esthetician on average is $250, and what you should be shooting for is $350. The average revenue per hour for a provider that can, let's just say, inject and do high-end lasers and whatnot is $450, but we want, $600 to $1,000 per hour. Now that $1,000 is pretty high, I get that, but that revenue per hour, like that gives you a benchmark to really go after. But what I tell people is first figure out where you're at, and then the goal is just to continue to get better all the time. And don't think that it has to be like such a big thing. Like I have to get them to buy a fourth RF microneedling or, a third syringe. It literally could be the difference between like one skincare product. Doctors, think about the volume of patients that you see in one single day. And if even 50% of those people bought one more skincare product for you, that takes you, 60 seconds versus another additional treatment, right? How compounding that much effort with revenue could get you to that revenue per hour. And so when you are training your team or looking at your numbers and wanting to grow, that small additional effort that can be made to increase revenue per hour and patient results. And I think you guys would be like shocked of how little effort it takes to really make that next jump. And what you'll notice about that for an esthetician, that means that to even hit that 200, you can't just be doing a facial and calling it a day. You can't just be doing, like the one hydrofacial. You have to sell skincare. You have to get them to do that, IPL or convert them over to that next treatment. So that takes training though to empower them for them to understand putting together these treatment plans. All right, guys, thanks so much for joining me live. We'll see you next week.